You know, when women live together, it's not always the prettiest situation, but let me tell you, the way that she speaks is the way that her heart is. And the way that her heart is all you see is Jesus shine through her.
I could say the same thing as Dimple. She's amazing, but it is truly a privilege to be here. I just would like to take 2 seconds to pray before I say anything. Father God, just want to thank you so much that you are such a good God and that you have given us the grace to sing your praises. Help me, Lord God, to proclaim all the good works that you have done in my life, God. In Jesus' name, amen. Daniel, your testimony was amazing. What an amazing God we have. And
Amen.
I'm a very ordinary person. Most of us are. But in the hands of God, our stories become very extraordinary.
Amen.
And as believers, what's amazing is that what I'm going to share here, the situation may be different, the circumstances might be different, but it declares the same power of God who's able to save and redeem, whose hands are not too short to save us, and who's able to sustain us. I didn't grow up in a Christian family, and I used to live in the Middle East with my parents. They decided to send me to England for further studies. Now, how God beautifully works is that He made me stay with my aunt and uncle, so my masi and my uncle, and they were at that point in their life where they were on fire for God. My uncle had started his church, so God knew this was the time He was going to send Tazeen to live with them. And I'm not going to go into all the details, but God got hold of me. From my dad's side, there is a lot of Islamic influence that was present in my life, while my mom came from a very strong Christian family. So there was always this confusion about religion and what is the truth. I thought I knew what was the truth until I met some circumstances that made me question. And my aunt and uncle were very instrumental in that. I remember at one point my uncle said, "Why are you asking all these people who God is? Why don't you just go up to Him and ask who He is?" And he quoted about Sadhu Sundar Singh, who is this teenager who asked God and God showed up. What got to me is that, how does he have this confidence that if I do not go to any human being, no influences, just go to God directly, it will be his God that will show up? I really got challenged by that confidence. So I said, okay, fine, I will give God 3 days. I gave God 3 days and I said, you better show up whoever you are, because I'm going to become an atheist if you don't show up in those 3 days. And God was like, Tazeen, I'm showing myself to you, but here you go. So that first night I had a dream. And in that dream, I saw that my aunt was showing me Jesus through the window. And I looked at the window and I said to my aunt, I can't see anything. And then my uncle takes me down to a basement, what it appeared in the dream. And there was a lot of darkness around me. And he puts his hand, he starts praying. And what I could understood is that in the dream I didn't know that that was tongues, but he was praying in the spirit. So I woke up from the dream and I was like, okay, that must have been just a lot of pizza the night before. It can be God. But it was God, because God was showing me, I'm showing myself to you, but you do not have the eyes to see me. But still, I'll play along with your game, because I want you. So I went to this thing called the Christian Union, and I'm going to skip lots of parts, because that was a miracle too, how I ended up being in that school meeting. And here there was all these Christian students sitting at that college meeting. I was probably the only non-Christian present, and the message of this guy was how God exists. And he did not use his Bible. He used science, and he used all the facts and logic that you could gather around. And I look back and I say, God, I was the only person who needed to hear that. And like Uncle sang such a beautiful song about the prodigal son. He leaves the 99 and goes after that one person that he knows needs him. And so God did that. And I remember that guy had a watch that was all these small pieces like unscrambled. And on the other side, the watch was fully put together. And he said, I got up, the night that I slept, the watch was all scrambled up into pieces. And when I got up the next morning, it was all put together by itself. And he said, it takes more faith to believe that story than to believe that God created us. And I walked out of that room knowing that it takes more faith to believe that there is no God than it takes to believe that there is God. So I became an agnostic and I started my journey again. And I'll skip lots of parts because God was working very powerfully to get hold of my heart and to help me to see. But this one night I really cried out to God. So I wrote Quran on one hand and I wrote it on the right hand because as Muslims, right hand was considered to be the holy hand. And I wrote Bible on the left hand. And I lifted my hands to God and I said, God, who are you? I want to know the truth. And so that night I had another dream. And I saw myself standing on the street and there was a white car that came in front of me. And when I opened the door, it had a book on the back seat. And it was a white book and it said HOLY BIBLE. And I remember getting up and I had the sense like, this is the God of Christian who's telling me that his book is the truth. And I was still confused. And I asked God and I said, God, what is the truth? Is this dream from you? And I just heard that voice that was not audible. It was inside of me, but I knew that it was God of Christian who was talking to me, saying, I am the truth. It was months later that I found out that actually this is a scriptural verse where God says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. And so that night I thought, okay, that day I thought, okay, God showed me he's the truth, but now how do I become a Christian? Maybe God has to come and touch me so that I will become a Christian. And so on, the journey went along where I'm like, all right, God, these God of Christians call you Abba Father, which was a very difficult concept for me to understand coming from the Muslim influence. So I said, these God of Christians call you Abba Father. If you are, then draw me to yourself. And I'll skip a lot of other factors to how I got to another meeting. And this pastor preached on grace and peace. And that was the first time I ever heard the message about what God had done for us on the cross. And there was no altar call. So when the service ended, I was still not a Christian according to my perception. And this pastor walked up to me and said, have you ever asked Jesus into your heart? And tears just rolled down my eyes because I felt that God had answered that prayer where I said, God of Christians, call you Abba Father, and a child. And my understanding was that God, Father brings the child towards himself. So that pastor coming to me and asking me if I wanted to ask Jesus into my heart was that moment. So I asked the Lord into my heart. It was March 22nd. And the Lord did great things. I went back to Abu Dhabi, and my sister became a Christian that year. Then my brother became a Christian, and my dad accepted the Lord 2 years later. So God was doing these great things. But life goes on, and we go through seasons. And I went through a very difficult season, fast forward many years. But it's incredible, this God that met me in my teenage years when I was seeking him and answered every question that I had and met me where I was at. That God is so faithful that he never leaves us. And I love the book of Lamentation. And lamentation means an expression of sorrow. So as you can imagine, this book has a lot of sorrowful expressions in it. The first chapter, the last chapter. But right in the middle of it is this beautiful verse that has been echoed in different languages and songs. And people testify to it because every Christian, every person who has asked Jesus into their heart, they can testify to it. And it's that Lamentations 3:23, that his mercies are new every morning and his faithfulness is great. And God brought me through because my daughter, who's sitting there and actually recording on the phone, she was 9 months old. And my son was a toddler, and I had found myself in a circumstance where I was in a shelter. And I said, God, did you bring me all this far and did all these miracles to bring me at this place of a pit? And it felt like where Daniel was, he had served God so faithfully, and yet he was in the midst of these lions and the circumstances. And God didn't say anything to me. He was silent. And as we grow in the Lord in our journey, you will notice that he's silent a lot of the times. But that's because he wants you to trust him. And my daughter is 9 now. So God has brought us through this amazing grace and power. And I look back and I say, God, this was like how you met Hagar in the desert, and she proclaimed that my God sees me. And so God has been amazing. So my story started on that night when I asked him, what is the truth? But it continues because our God is faithful and he doesn't give up on us. And when I had asked the Lord that night on March 22nd, he could fast forward it to that to 2015 on March 22nd, when the March 22nd was also on Sunday, and my son took water baptism and asked the Lord to be his Lord and Savior in front of everyone. And I said, God, you knew when that teenager was asking you to be her Lord. You got her whole life covered. You were going to sustain her, and you were going to bring her next generation into your kingdom. So I just want to encourage everyone here, if you're going through a hard time, don't give up, because our God is so faithful and he sustains. He does miracles, and even in his silence, his mercies are great and his faithfulness is great.
Amen.
Haji means older sister, so thank you, Desi Haji. And I would like to welcome Pastor Zureka. She's a powerful woman of God, and what I can say about her is not even enough. The respect and love that I have for her in such a short span of time. I met her about a year and a half ago through my sister Shazia, and this is where they fellowship. This Zion Fellowship. It happens every Sunday at 10:30 in the morning, and we'll just hand it over to her so she can bless us with the word. Thank you.